So we have 5 mini presentations, and to those that are doing the presentations, that means you get roughly 10 minutes-ish. So, 5-7 minutes for your presentation, and then a few minutes for questions are encouraged. That sound good? Up first, we have Carolyn Marr with 175.
I don't know how to change the slide. Okay. Great. That was my presentation. Excellent. So I told Sam I would do this in 5 to 10 minutes, and then I made the slides and was like, oh, interesting. So I'll try to talk fast. They are really hard to see on here. Okay. So I'm Caroline Marr. I'm a lead mentor for, I feel personally targeted. I'm lead mentor for Buzz Robotics. I've been a first volunteer for 19 years, a Buzz mentor for 9 years, and I've been a math teacher for 8 years. So I just wanted to take a second to explain when I'm talking about fundraising strategies, what do I mean? Because people use this word to mean slightly different things. So some people, when they say fundraising, they mean every way your team gets money. I'm really focusing in on like students going and not grants, donations, sponsorships, but selling things, that kind of thing. So one thing to note before I go too far into this is that student fundraising really is unlikely to be able to make up the majority of your budget. So this is ours from last year, which thanks to my mom, who I called in the middle of the night to give me these numbers. But you can see like our pie is mostly either in-kind donations or cash donations. Student fundraising makes up about 30% for us. That'll obviously be different for everybody, but it's a great way to fund part of your team, but for most people, not a feasible way to fund all of your team. So sometimes I talk to teams that are struggling to fund the team. I mean, obviously there are teams that run fundraisers that fund their whole teams, but that's not the point of this conversation. Like, I talk to teams and they're like, what can we sell to fund our team? If you want to fund your team, the first thing to do is look for sponsors, grants, and donations. However, fundraising is a piece of that pie for most teams. So why do we think fundraising is important aside from just sponsors, grants, donations? We want to be able to ensure that students from all financial backgrounds can participate. It gives our students and our families a stake in funding the team and helps them understand how much goes into funding the team. And it also teaches valuable skills in business, finance, but also communication. They have to go ask people for money, that kind of thing. So I want to kind of break this down into 2 pieces of the conversation. What are our team policies that we use to increase that buy-in, but also support those students from diverse backgrounds? And how do we choose fundraisers? So team policy-wise, I know that a lot of teams have a team fee. Many teams do a fundraising model for their team fee, some don't. I am from a town that is between 40 to 48% free and reduced lunch, depending on the year and the level. So we have a lot of families who would not be able to pay $1,000 if it was required of them, and some families where even if they could, they wouldn't. So we have a team fee that all students are responsible for. As of right now, it's $650. Please don't ask me how we arrived at that number. It just is. So our students may fundraise all or part of their team fee, but one thing that we do that's a little unique is nobody is allowed to hand me a check for $650. In order to be eligible to remain team members, all students must fundraise at least part of their team fee, because we don't want to create a situation where kids whose families don't have money are working really hard, and kids whose families do have money are writing a check. As a team collectively, we work to create enough fundraisers for the students to raise the full amount. That planning is shared between mentors, students, and families, which sometimes it leans more towards parents, sometimes more towards mentors, depending on the year, the mentors, and the families. And money from each fundraiser is split between students according to their contribution. So if it's a group event like a field cleanup, Anybody who shows up and cleans up the field and we get paid for it, they get an even amount of that split. If it's individual sales, like a raffle, the student gets whatever profit comes from their sale, okay? One challenge with this is we've had a lot of issues with what if a student raises more than $650. Pre-pandemic, we said if you raise more than $650, that money just goes to the team. The good side is that all students will be responsible for their own fundraising, and hardworking students can raise extra money for the team overall for potentially things that they would like the team to be able to do. The cons are that it tends to disincentivize students from fundraising more than $650, even if they can. It creates challenges for students without as much of a local connection because they can't get help from their friends. And it encourages students to find creative solutions, by which I mean the students kind of doing backdoor deals for like, I already sold my $650, but I'll sell these tickets and then you can say it's your money kind of thing to try to help out their friends. So we switched to students can donate to other students. So if you raise $1,000, you have $450 extra, you can say, I want that to go to my friend who can't raise the money, okay? The upside is incentivizes students to raise extra money because they want to help their friends. Gives them the opportunity to help their teammates, and students who don't have that necessarily that local connection can get help with those from students who have more. Downside is that some students whose friends are really good fundraisers will simply not fundraise. And when they can choose to give it to their friends, students who aren't as close with other team members feel like they don't get the support. Also, there are some student privacy issues because team members might say, and intentionally they're being really kind, who needs my help? I want to give it to them. Or ask their friends like, are you able to do your fundraising? Do you need help? So there's a little bit of a privacy issue in there. We haven't totally solved this, but we've also considered evenly splitting the overage, allowing them to donate part of the overage, or some other options there. So still working on that particular problem. As far as choosing fundraisers, this I think is the most important thing. Our general rule is that every fundraiser should make $1,000 or more. Because if it doesn't, it's generally not worth our time unless it's incredibly low effort. Like if we have to do nothing, then I'll make $500 for nothing. But if I or the kids or the families have to put any work into it, we should be making a decent amount of money. We have started in the last couple of years planning our fundraiser calendar in advance. So instead of kind of going through the year like, oh, should we do a paint night soon? Should we do this? We have started, actually we did it at one of our last meetings last year, sitting down with everybody and saying, this fundraiser this date, this fundraiser this date, this fundraiser this date. It allows the students to set aside those dates very early, allows the team to balance when our fundraisers are so they aren't too close together, and allows us to keep the more effort intensive fundraisers out of build season. We also really want to avoid any low profit margin sales, so we don't sell dough, we don't sell wrapping paper. I think of those types of fundraisers as basically a trap. And we really want to play to team strengths. So for us, team planned events and activities are a strength. We're good at planning events and we like it. And so that gives us high profit margins. If your team isn't good at planning events, but your kids are great at selling ads, then that would be something to focus on. So I have my own little matrix. This is our profit and effort. And your team is totally going to find that what is high effort, high profit for you might not be what is high effort, high profit for me, right? So the ones we want to completely avoid are the high effort, low profit fundraisers. I have those in red. So anything that we've tried and found it fell into that bin, we threw it out. Bake sales are a good example of this. The brochure type fundraisers, wrapping paper, etc. And for us, like we did savers, tag sales, that kind of thing, those were very high effort and low profit. But again, if you live in a different area, you might find that a tag sale is a high profit fundraiser. So our kind of middle options are the low effort, low profit. Restaurant fundraisers generally fall in that because usually you just have to hand out flyers, but you may not get a ton back. Any kind of donation box situation for us, if we can go sit somewhere with a donation box and people give us money, that's not a ton of effort, usually doesn't result in a ton back. Something like penny wars we haven't done, but I know my mother did that at her school, and it can be pretty low effort, but not the biggest profit, mostly pennies. And then Build-A-Bot, which is an idea that we got from the Granby Grunts, where they essentially have a card that says, thank you for helping to build our robot, and it lists, like, if you give us $5, it helps us buy these things, $10, it helps us buy these things. So you kind of just go out and say, like, hey, would you like to help us build our robot? It's great for those people who, when you try to sell them a ticket or something like that, they say, I don't really want one, can I just give you money? So our other middle ground is those high effort, high profit fundraisers, which we do a lot of because that green area, the low effort, high profit fundraiser, those are sort of a diamond in the rough, right? They're hard to find. So we've been running a pasta supper for at least the last 20 years. I have no idea. We do a paint night. We sometimes do t-shirt sales, and we've done an ad book. So the ad book is a good example of how things are not the same for every team. So when I first joined the team, we had a mentor who worked for a printing company and printed our ad book for free, and our kids were really great at going out and selling ads. Later on, he changed jobs, then we had to pay for the ad book. That was a big reduction in our profit, so then you move it to the low profit section, and then for whatever reason, our kids got really bad at selling ads, so then we have to move it to the high effort, low profit. So depending on your team will really depend where things kind of fit in. T-shirt sales, again, only work if you have a high profit margin, so you have to get a good vendor for that. And paint night for us, for example, we have a parent who used to do that kind of wine and paint thing, so he does that for us for free. If you had to pay somebody to do it, that's gonna reduce your profit. The low profit, high effort options for us, bottles and cans. This is one I absolutely thought was never going to make a profit when the mentors and parents suggested it. I was like, don't people return their own cans? We've made between $2,000 and $4,000 on this every year. So as it turns out, no, people do not return their own cans. Calendar raffle, it's a little on the border between high and low effort because you have to get all the prizes and you have to handle the logistics, but selling the tickets is incredibly easy. People are really happy to hand you $10 for the chance to win a prize. And they don't have to show up for anything, which they like a lot. Field cleanup is something that UConn does with youth organizations where they will pay you $1,200 to bring 30 people in after a football game and pick up trash. So this is gross, but it only takes 3 hours. And also, if you go after a soccer game, it's way grosser. I don't know why. So for us, we've had a lot of success with this. For the last 2 years, we've had 0 students pay $1. That includes in 2024, we went back to Worlds for the first time since the pandemic. All students who wanted to attend were able to attend. Students paid 0. There was no student contribution to Worlds at all, which was incredibly important for us because most of our students would not be able to go if they had to pay. We also were able to take all of our key mentors without the mentors paying. So it can be really effective as long as you are planning appropriately and thinking about your effort versus profit. And our future goals, solve that issue for students who over-fundraise, continue to work on how we can support students who struggle to fundraise. A lot of our students who are really introverted, shy, anxious have a very hard time asking people for money. And we also want to see if there's a way to incorporate incentives for a student acquiring a grant or a sponsor, which I know other teams do as well. 195, the Cyber Knights, do that. Any questions?
What's the balance of time commitment and
We are a light off-season team compared to a lot. We meet 1 day a week. We have tried to increase that, and every time we do, it skyrockets our burnout very quickly. So we don't usually spend meeting time on fundraising. We tend to do kind of, except our business students. Our business students will spend meeting time on fundraising. In general, we kind of work that a little more offline with the parents and stuff like that. We also are lucky enough that our fundraiser, we've now established the 4 fundraisers that we do. We do pasta supper, paint night, calendar raffle, field cleanup, bottles and cans, 5. So those now require way less planning than they ever have in the past, so that also helps us. We do paint night, calendar raffle in the off season. We do pasta supper during build season, which seems crazy and has been in the past, but now our school culinary teacher is actually doing the cooking for us. So that has flipped that event to a much more reasonable thing to do during build season. Bottles and cans, we do 24/7, 365. You could hand them to me right now and I would put them in a place in the shop the fire marshal would not like. So we definitely, so we spend most of our off-season meeting time on projects, and training and that kind of thing. Our fundraisers, we do kind of outside more of meeting time, except for our business students. Casey? Yeah, so our general bottles and cans fundraiser is we will take your cans at any time. We are incredibly lucky. For those of you who have been to our build space, which if you have not and you are in the Enfield area, Western Mass, Northern Connecticut, you are welcome to come. We have a practice field. Feel free to email frc0175@gmail.com. But a lot of people have been. We are very lucky because our district closed one of the schools, leaving us an entire wing, shop, and cafeteria in the closed high school. And so because of that, we hoard cans in places. So we will take them at any time we have an event, fundraiser, pasta supper, et cetera, we'll say, by the way, bring your cans. You see your grandparents, ask them if you can have their cans. So part of that is a lot of continuous, now people know we take their cans and they bring them. And then we'll also do 1 or 2 times a year a can drive, put up signs all over the place. Usually on a Saturday, we will stand outside and take cans from whoever drives up. So we usually do both of those, and that's what's raising the money. But definitely I would say the biggest impact is from getting the reputation, give me your cans. So I will say that to anybody at any time. Any other questions? Great.
Awesome, thank you, Carolyn. That I think next year you should do a full one. I think you just signed yourself up for a full slot for next year. All right, next we have Sean Stevens, 341. Come on up.
All right, how does this work? Oh, okay, cool. Hi, everybody. So this is called the competitive mentality, and I give this presentation to my students. I started giving this presentation in 2019. At around that time, the Eagles were doing really well. The Philadelphia Eagles, they had won the Super Bowl the year before, and I had gotten really into it because we're from the Philadelphia area. And I started watching like a lot of the player conferences after the games, and almost all the players ended up saying like the same things, right? And you can see it across multiple teams. You can see it across multiple sports that, you know, that there is a certain mentality that goes along with playing at an extremely high level, and that's what inspired me to give this presentation. And also, it was because I was seeing myself and my teammates get frustrated at events when things weren't going the way that we were supposed to. So I was thinking, you know, we must be thinking about this in the wrong way. There must be something going on differently here that we don't know about. So I put together this presentation, and what you're going to see today is like an abridged version that's been boiled down to like the 4 or 5 most important concepts. So a little bit about me first. I was a member on Team 341 from 2009 to 2012. So I was actually able to be on the drive team for our amazing 2012 robot that a lot of you guys are probably familiar with. So I was extremely lucky with that, and I got a taste of what it was like to be extremely good very early on in my career, which has sort of been like a high that I've been trying to get back to for a long time. So I took 1 year off, technically. You know, I was still in the shop a lot in 2013, but in 2014 I became an official mentor of Miss Daisy, and then in 2015 I became the drive coach of Miss Daisy. So been about 10 years as a mentor plus 4 years as a student, and then a bunch in between. I went to Drexel University. I'm actually an electrical engineer, but I do not do electrical engineering on our team. I do mechanical and strategy. And I work as an electrical engineer for ASI Drives, and I mostly focus on motor performance and ratings. So just as a little bit of background, I just want to give you a little bit about like how we conceptualize our team and how we focus on the robot. So we see the robot as a tool that helps us accomplish our other goals, which are mainly to make our students grow, to make sure we're challenging ourselves, and to face through the adversity that makes you grow. So what we believe is that as you go through this, the catalyst to the whole program is trying to build a good robot. You don't have to build a good robot. You have to try to build a good robot. And that's because in that trying to build a good robot, you create the positive feedback loop that enables your students to get better and to learn. So, every year we get our new game and we get up and we try to build a good robot and we do things wrong and we learn, and then the next time we try to do it, we build it better and we learn and we fail, and it goes over and over and over again. But we wouldn't drive that process if we weren't trying to be good. We could get to something that's okay, we could say, yeah, that's great, and then we'd miss out on all the extra learning. So that's just a little bit of background about what we're trying to do. So the most important concept, and the reason I've called this out separately, is the growth mindset, and I think you talked about this in your presentation yesterday, but I think this is so important. And I saw this pyramid set up one time, and at the top it's play to improve, not playing to win, and it's really about what you should be focusing on is not the results, but the process of playing. So make sure that you're trying to do things in the right way, that you're trying to iterate every opportunity that you get, and focus on the process. So really what that means for us is every chance that we go through any process, whether it's a match or a build season or a whatever, that's an opportunity to make that process better with what we learn from it. We want to make sure that we show up with a game plan. We never want to go into anything not having an intent on what we're going to achieve. We want to be really focused on the details so that nothing slips away from us. We don't miss an opportunity to learn something. We want to make sure that when we make mistakes, we talk about them and that we understand them and that we correct them. And then we want to make sure that we're focusing on one match at a time. Because when you're in this mindset, it can really feel like the errors just stack up, right? Oh, I'm doing so many things wrong. But really what you need to do is you need to do one match, learn what you need to learn from it, put it behind you, move forward, and that's how you can constantly be focused on the process and not the results. A couple other important topics. As I said, I'm a big Eagles fan, so on the ring this year, there's wings that pop out, and on the wings that pop out, it says, "You can't be great without the greatness of others." So as I'm sure you guys are aware, whether in a good way or a bad way, FRC is built so that you have to depend on other people. Whether it's internally to your team, with your teammates and your mentors, or whether it's externally in your alliance partners or the volunteers at your event. And as you go through the process of trying to be great, you need to make sure that you understand your role in all of this, and make sure that you are great at your role and that you're fulfilling that for your team and for your region. So, if you're going to be the drive coach, do what you have to do to be as good as you can possibly be at that, and focus on that. And then you have to have a little bit of trust in the rest of the people on your team that they're going to try to be good at their role and that you're all going to work together. And if that's not the case on your team or with your alliance partners, there are a lot of opportunities where you can help people get better. Some of the best teams in the world are that way because they never have partners break. They're always helping each other. and they are able to elevate those around them to a higher level very quickly, which is something that obviously not everybody has the capability to do, but it's something that you should strive to do. We say this one all the time. We say success is never owned, it's only rented. And you have to pay the rent every day by working hard, caring about your work, trying to improve, trying to keep a level head. I know it's hard to keep a level head sometimes, and not having an ego. And then in that process, as you keep paying the rent, you will move towards success. It doesn't matter where you start. You know, you could have won no matches last year, but if you show up every day and you do these things, you will begin your process of moving towards success. And you know, sort of in the growth mindset, this is really what it's all about. Begin the process of moving towards success. The picture here actually is really important to me. This was a really critical moment in our season this year. Our team goal for the year was to win the district championship, and we ended up being the #1 seed, and we got to the finals, and then we lost because our partner broke in the last match, and also we didn't have a good plan for how to deal with that. So in this photo, what I'm telling the students is to be proud of the work they put in because they didn't do anything wrong, and not to be defined by the result, but rather the work that they put in to get there. Which leads to the next topic, which is something that we talk about all the time. It's this phrase, sacrifice for the unknown, from Herb Brooks, which if any of you saw the movie, I think it's called The Miracle, about the hockey team, the United States hockey team that won the Olympics in 1980 or something. Basically, his whole thing is, you know, you can be as good as you want to be as long as you're willing to sacrifice for it. So you have to be willing to give everything you have for something that may never happen, and you have to take that leap of faith. Because if you don't do it, you'll never get there. And so what we talk about with this is that you have to understand that you have to work hard with no guarantee that anything's going to happen for you. You have to be willing to make all the sacrifices that we make and put in all the time that you put in just for the chance to try to have success. And as some of you guys know, success is kind of a moving target, and it takes what it takes. So so many things can go wrong along the way, and you just have to make sure that you understand that you're sacrificing for an unknown end, not necessarily for a result. And then a little bit of further reading for you. I have a book recommendation. It's called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. And as a disclaimer, this is a book about golf. It is not a book about self-help tips or whatever. It's a book about how to control your game, how to stay focused, the mental side of golf. But I think it translates really, really well into robotics because golf has a couple things that overlap really well. It's mainly that your execution period is very short and your thinking period is very long, right? Your practice, your thinking period is very long compared to how much you actually get to play, which can make it so that it feels like errors are catastrophic when they're not, and you need to stay focused and move on to the next thing. So if you are going to read this book, it would help if you have a little bit of knowledge on golf. But obviously you don't need to. So yeah, the full audiobook is available on YouTube if you want to listen to it and not pay any money. But my physical copy of this book is great. It has all my highlights and notes and everything in it. So I highly recommend that you get it. I think it's like $12 on Amazon. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys. Any questions? Yeah.
Talk about, just really briefly, what does a post-match, one match, you play one match?
Sure.
Can you just talk your post-match, whatever?
Yeah. So I put a picture in here that I forgot to talk about, actually. So this is our post-match process. And the student whose face you can see, his name is Patrick, and he's been our analyst for the last 3 years. So the analyst is a drive team role that we made up, which is basically the communication line between what the stands see and what the drive team sees, right? Because the students in the stands often see the match in a very different way than the drive team does. The drive team is again focused on the process of playing, whereas the stands are sometimes if you don't do these things, you will not get picked. So he relays that, and what he does is he records the match on this tablet, and he brings it down to us, and then we talk through the match and look for ways that we can improve. One of the biggest improvements this year is that while we were at our second event, the students actually were watching Madtown and Citrus play, and they were saying, like, Madtown is not focusing on the high levels first, they're focusing on the pegs in front of them. And so throughout that event, we were discussing, like, is that actually better? Does it, does that save us time because we have the ground intake that is able to do that? And then, so we were having that dialogue the whole time, we were getting better, and we didn't end up implementing that until our next event, but we were talking about it, every match, I think you could have gone here instead to save a second or whatever. So that's how you get a little bit better every time.
And Mike, sorry, one more thing.
Yeah.
Is your drive team also fixing the robot?
No.
Are those two separate entities?
Yes. Yeah. So our drive team is able to have other leadership roles, but on game day they are only the drive team. They are nothing else.
So you guys have this conversation, robot is well, like.
Yes, we leave the robot in the pit and we go away, and we talk about this. One thing that helps with that is like trying to make sure your robot doesn't change between every match, like. But that's hard. Did you have one? Somebody? No? Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
We're gonna have to go get a beer because I want to talk more about all that stuff. That was all. Juju looked at me at one point and was like, "We need an analyst." All right, up next we got Michael Light, 1403. What are you talking about? Golf? No, I'm just kidding.
All right. This presentation is going to be a little weird because it's not how to do robots, how to run a team, all this. This is, for me, going through the program as an alumni, I have iterated on the mentoring because I thought mentors build robots and that's what they do in their daily lives. That's a lie. So in my chance, this is how I can teach students about real world ideas and stuff. So to give you a background about my team, 100 students, 2 teachers, me and another mentor, and then 6 parents. That fluctuates in there. So we have 8 sub-teams, logistics and robot side, and then I like to say we're a small business that doesn't generate revenue. As you can tell, that's our whole team. From there, we have our, to branch this off, we have one night on Wednesdays. We call them our Cougar classes. It's broken into 3 sections. One is going to be our Big Cougar, Little Cougar, to get the freshmen and sophomores into the team to kind of give some icebreakers. And then we have our the presentation for mentors, which we'll talk about, and then the design challenges. So for the Big Cougar, Little Cougar, this was started in 2019 from actually a student initiative with it, where they saw that when they were freshmen and sophomores on the team, they didn't feel like they were a part of the team. So they, wanted to change that culture, change the culture of our team. They gave presentations about the team, did some games. We kind of revamped it to put it into this night. There's icebreakers. We have, where is it? Shipwreck Captain Command, which is the one on your right, where we kind of, it's really goofy. It's like get in the canoe, so you have to find like 4 people and like paddle on the side. You have to do turtle, so that's where all the students are on their back and being like turtle, turtle. So it's just to get them like really out of their element, and it's just a load of fun. They also do design challenges there. On the left, you can see they have pasta, marshmallows. Be careful with that design challenge because it does get messy with stuff of that nature. So then when the next part is our Cougar classes, we give presentations. Mentors give about 15 to 20-minute presentation on different topics. These are all the topics that we've done. When I first started these classes, I was doing, hey, let's talk about an elevator design, an FRC, and I had half the room give me a blank stare or so bored because they don't care. They're on the logistics side. They don't really care about the design, so I've iterated on that and go, okay, let's give them some real world like ideas of like what are standards, like design standards, ethics. The fun one to make it like approachable. was Thanos right when he snapped his finger and eliminated half the people or half of, existence? Is that ethically sound? Like, let's discuss that. So like, there's that to bring it in and make it a little bit more fun. Business etiquette, branding, other mentors teaching that. We get inspired from other mentors. I know we did storytelling this year because Coach Norm, during his keynote speech, talked about, an important skill in life is storytelling. Mental health is a big one to get, to just, it's not supposed to be this in-depth talk. It's just a small, like, surface level, like, here's something to think about. Get them, and then cooking. I love this one because cooking is 100% STEM. And, it's not, when we think of STEM in robotics, it's just robots. But now cooking, you can look at, what's the science behind a pizza oven? What's the material breakdown of a knife? And like all that can be broken into STEM to get them thinking about things differently. So once we do that, we go into our design challenges. These are, cheap materials, popsicle sticks, playing cards. We're using old game pieces, textbooks, they build stuff. We have bridges. One fun little anecdote was our captains were building bridges and they're like, we learned in physics, you use triangles, triangles, triangles. And I'm like, yeah, but they didn't have it this way. They had it leaning down this way, so none of the forces was being used. And I was like, you guys sure about that? They're like, don't worry about it. And it's like, there's the lesson there. So we go around, we break the groups up. We have 60 to 70 kids that show up for these classes. Breaking up, and it's like herding cats that trying to get make sure everybody's focused and getting what they need to do. It's also fun when kids are like going to other teams and they're like, what are you doing? They're like, we're scouting. We're seeing what other teams are doing to see if we can take their designs. So it's a blast. We have so much fun with it. We do paper rockets. We did like a little PVC rig with just a valve, hook it up to a portable air compressor, get it to a certain PSI, and then just shoot it through the our cafeteria. Just gives them different things, and we make it also a challenge. So whoever has the most wins out of this gets $100 at the end of this. We do about 5 classes. And then the fun one is we challenge them against mentors. Mentors do it, and it's great because mentors think we know so much and we over-design everything, and the students beat us, so that's always great to see. And then the other fun one we get to do with our students is like, what happens if your boss is on a way and like a vacation or something? So we take like the student leader in that group, we pull them out, so then the underclassmen have to work together. Or it's like one hand behind your back and you only use one hand in the challenge, or you can't talk. Like those are different skills that they have to adapt to, and just, we have fun with it. Like we just see the, and then they just keep working. So that's beautiful. Then the last thing we do, which first is always about changing culture. This is something I am truly passionate about, and I love that our team does. We host, the students present on their cultural background. So our team is predominantly Indian. I've learned so much from these students, from the difference between North and South India, the food. As you go, I think South is hotter food than North. Their religion, their culture. And the one beautiful thing about this was we had a mentor. She was like, yeah, my side of the family's South Indian and my husband's is North. And when we get together for holidays, everybody's arguing and I have to break them up and be the, the common ground between it. I would have never heard that story if we didn't have these classes. We also get guest teams. We've reached out to 3132, Thunder Down Under, 4481, the Rembrandts, Robo Leon, just to give a different perspective of those cultures. And then once we everybody starts to understand that, everyone's cultural background, we can be like more tolerable and understand it. And then I give a presentation about our team culture and our 3 pillars of family, dedication, and quality. Those are what, because we're there for long hours, that they're all dedicated. We're a big family, and it shows through these classes that everybody's there. And then, last one is just quality. We're producing quality robots, quality students, and everything of that nature, and that just binds us together. So that's kind of the, team building classes we do about 5 times in the off season just to build up team morale. So, any questions?
All right, next we have Levi Fitzpatrick from 2064. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Levi. I am the programming mentor for FRC Team 2064 out of Southbury and Middlebury, Connecticut. And I'm going to tell you, talk like a robot. Now, what I really want you to do is, as we approach the pre-season here, coming into August and into September when the school starts, we should be really conscious that us as mentors are coming into this with a large wealth of knowledge that we've either accumulated over our years of being FRC mentors, alum, or even just years of experience in our respective fields. With this, we really want to understand that we have this knowledge, and we should really simplify a lot of the language that we use while interacting with our students. If we do this, hopefully it leads to some better outcomes, being better discussions and conversations with our students. The idea of talking like a robot is breaking down robot functions and subsystems into fundamental instruction. We want to do this because there are students with a ton of varying levels of skill. When we get students coming into FRC, a lot of the time it's their first introduction to real engineering. And then we have our later students, such as our juniors and seniors, who may have been in the program for a few years, and they have kind of understand the lingo that we use and a lot of the concepts that we discuss. We tend to under-explain a lot of subsystems and functions as mentors because we're so familiar with them. And we have been using these tools for so long. This kind of comes into something called assumed knowledge. We assume that these students might have the same level of knowledge with us, and we know that they don't. We also want to counteract students being able to not change interests. A lot of the time, a student might come into FRC as a programmer, and then they realize it's not really for them. We want them to have a somewhat smooth transition to either a design team or a build team, and we can do that by talking like a robot. This also leads into a lack of inclusivity, particularly with newer students. They don't have the information that we have, and they could be a little excluded from the conversations that we're having. So what does this really look like? I'm going to go through our 2024 intake real quick, and very basically, it's the intake goes and gets a note. That doesn't really answer any of the how this is happening, so students might get a little lost. So let's break it down. First, the intake rotates from a stowed position to a ground position. Then the intake wheels spin inwards. When we detect a note, it stops the intake wheels and transitions to a handoff position. The intake wheels spin outwards, and then the intake rotates from a handoff position to a stowed position. I've highlighted some key words or key phrases here to really help understand why we're breaking it down. Firstly, intake rotates. We know we need some sort of motor here now, or some way to rotate the intake. Then I've highlighted position. This means we need to know the relative position of the subsystem to the robot. This can be done with some sort of absolute encoder or the internal encoder on a brushless motor. Now we say the intake wheels spin, so we know we need another motor for our intake. And we have detect, which means we need to be able to tell that the note is in there somewhere. This helps break down a lot of the how this subsystem functions, much more than if we just said the intake goes and gets a note. This helps students succeed because they're able to be a lot more of an active participant in the conversations we have around subsystems. And it really emphasizes that constant learning. If we're always repeating how subsystems function, they'll be able to build their own subsystems on their own and really understand all the core, both information we need to gather from subsystems and how they might interact with the robot. It's also easier for them to pursue different interests on the team. If the programming team and the design team are both speaking the same language, speaking the same way, it's a lot easier for them to transition from team to team. Also, if I go back real quick, some of you might be able to recognize this as somewhat of a pseudocode state machine, and that's how we program at 2064. This also leads to clearer communication between subsystems. Like I was saying, not only can they transition from subteam to subteam, they're able to talk with members from other subteams in a very clear, uniform way. So how do we really teach our students to be able to talk in this way, as well as us. First, we can lead by example, but also there's something called the 6-brick back-to-back challenge. There are lots of different ways you can teach semantics, essentially. This is a way that we're trying to do where students pair off and they stand back-to-back. One student builds a model and then has to explain to their partner how they might be able to build that model. The partner attempts to build that structure without looking at it or asking questions, and we see how close they can get to that final result. There are different variations of this. You can make it so that a student doesn't have to describe it, and the partner must ask multiple questions to help them get better at really formulating good semantical questions. And such. There's a PDF somewhere, if you just look up 6-brick challenge. I believe FLL has some resource on it as well somewhere, but yeah. So really, we need to accommodate students at every level. And we need to be able to have these meaningful conversations with the students, and this helps with that. It also reinforces their learning at every step. So, talking like a robot gives more student agency, better communication, and improves knowledge growth. Now, if you want to contact me ever, you can contact me at levi@2064.team. I love talking about both education in FRC specifically and all that jazz. So, yeah, that's all. Any questions? No? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Technical mentor, what you did like in, I would say, in a classroom environment, you taught the vocabulary that's common, which is necessary for depending on what level the students are on. So, I mean, you use different terms to describe it, but it's necessary for that learning curve for kids to have that vocabulary in common.
Yeah, and particularly now, we've seen it a lot in this post-COVID era in which students struggle to reach out as much as they might have in the past. And one of the ways we can help with that is reaching them before they have to reach out. And by over-explaining things sometimes, it really helps them feel some sort of confidence in themselves and have more of a starting point on where they might want to ask questions and interact with us. So, yeah.
Seems like good modeling for like how to talk to judges or like at outreach events, like explaining what your robot does to other people too, making it accessible in a way that like a public like rando could understand it, or like if you're explaining your robot to a judge who's never watched a match of yours, like
Yeah.
showing them through how the robot functions.
Yeah, it definitely helps with judging as well, because if you can explain it to someone who's brand new on the team, you could probably explain it to someone who has at least some sort of knowledge of SRC in some examples. So, yeah. Nope, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Do you have any like common pitfalls that people fall into? Because I know that I commit errors with this, that I explain things in a way that's not correct.
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing for me is knowing sensors. Kids forget to, like particularly design students, forget that us as programmers really need information from a robot. And making sure you really think about like, okay, how are we going to know that either a game piece is in our subsystem or where our subsystem is? Really focusing on how we get information from a robot is a big pitfall I see like a lot of students fall into, of just not really making that kind of plan. So, yeah.
Thanks, Levi. All right, Jamie, you got this? You got this.
Okay, I am going to talk about unified robotics really quickly. So this is a very New England focused conversation, so if you're not from New England, sorry. Email me and I can help you get started if you're really doing this. So first of all, does everyone know what unified is? Unified sports? Everybody's heard of unified sports? Yes? Okay, so unified sports is when people with and without intellectual disabilities are on the same team. and it's a Special Olympics program. They have specific sports that they sponsor. In some states in New England, robotics has been included in that. Some of us in other states are working toward that. So in Maine, we went to Special Olympics. We said we want to start this. They said, great, we're going to put it on our roster. Done. So when you think about who participates, you need to have, typically, the way that we have it set up in our state is that current teams have unified teams with them. So your current team members would be the mentors on your team. And what this is great for is if you have students who participate in unified sports in other ways, this is a great way to get them to come join your team, because typically people that do unified sports do all of them because they like the experience of working with the students. The athletes, that's what they call the students with intellectual disabilities, they need to be in the age range that you're working. So you want to, the point of unified is to pair the people with similar age ranges. So you want to get your high school students with intellectual disabilities who already are not on your team, right? Because some students with intellectual disabilities actually are better functioning on our teams. So I'm talking about the students that can't be on your teams for safety reasons or potentially physical reasons. That's what Unified is for when it comes to what we're doing. And then your adults, you really are just yourselves or whoever other mentors. And again, this is a great way to get some of those other folks that are already work on unified teams to come to be on your team as well. So it's a great way to recruit people. The competition looks different wherever you go. It really should reflect the core values of Special Olympics and FIRST, which are the same, which is great. In Maine, we played superpowered. In Massachusetts, they played replay, and in Connecticut, they played replay. At the competitions, we integrated it into the Pine Tree event, where during the playoffs, we played one FRC event, and then one unified match, and then one FRC match, and then one unified match. So it was integrated into our playoffs. You can see the other states. At the district champs, we got together, created a video, and had a video showcase, because typically the students that are involved in Unified, they don't travel long distances and then don't stay overnight. Like, these are students that maybe come for a couple of hours, and that's their limit. Like, they don't have the capability to marathon a robotics competition. If you want to get involved, if you want to contact me, I think Scott McCall is actually here, and he's working on the Vermont group, but you can contact me or Andrea Harvey in Maine. Sam's going to get all these slides out to you, so you don't have to write anything down. Josh Miranda on the Neutrons is running the Massachusetts group. Jamie Deere, and I forget what team she's on in New Hampshire. And then John Niski is in Connecticut. If you're outside New England and you want to get involved, just contact me and I'll find somebody in your state who's interested. Okay, who has questions? All right, awesome. I hope I see all of you New England people with a unified group next year.
Thank you, Jamie, Carolyn, Sean, Michael, Levi. Thank you all for your presentations. They were really great. I think we're going to take a short break, and then we'll hop into the next round of presentations. Thanks.